All righty. All right, so welcome to Brookline 101 with the Brookline Public Library and Tad Putney from the town of Brookline, our town administrator. Thank you all for signing up and for coming. We're very excited because we've got a large number of signups and hopefully people will learn something tonight. Mentioned that we're going to be recording. I've asked everyone to stay muted. You can type questions into the chat or we can unmute after the presentation. Our next program from the Brookline Public Library is called Life Downstairs, about the British servant culture that we see in programs like Upstairs, Downstairs, and Downton Abbey, and that's with the host Anne McClellan from the New Hampshire Humanities, who make that possible. So that's on Thursday, March 10th at 6:30 p.m. So I will do a quick introduction to Tad and a couple of notes, and he's going to take it away, which is good because he's a much better presenter than I am. But many of you know Tad. He's our town administrator now, formerly a select board member as well, and has been really an integral part of helping, I think, make Brookline a wonderful place to live. He has announced his retirement, which is sad for me and many people to hear. After more than 14 years of service. I just remember from way back when we first started talking about sidewalks to schools, Tad, and all that way back then. So, and then I sent all of you a copy of the little outline that I had done. On there is the town website address, and right next to that is the direct link to the part of the town website that has so much information for residents on it. You can sign up for alerts on the town website. That's a good idea, especially if you want to hear about a particular agenda or meeting that's coming up. As we're going to be discussing how the town functions, we'll talk about when the elections are, and I just found that the Hollis Brookline Rotary has again scheduled a candidate forum by Zoom for Thursday, February 24th at 7 p.m. So that's a way to learn about the candidates that are going to be on the ballot. And the Hollis Brookline News Online has a list of the candidates for the ballots for both Hollis and Brookline. So and I'm sure that'll be on the website, or the town website, fairly soon. And that's all I have. So I'm going to turn it over to Tad and let him start talking about what we told you we would be talking about. We'll refer to how the town meeting works, and we'll talk about the town warrant that's coming up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Keith. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to parachute in here and spend a few minutes helping to share a little bit of information around this annual event that we call town meeting. A procedural question, Keith, would you like people to hold questions till the end, or do we want to ask questions as I go?
I don't have a preference, whichever's easier for you. Okay.
People want to interrupt me, they certainly can with a chat or raising their hand or waving or whatever. And I'm happy
I'll keep an eye on the chat and the raised hands. Okay. So that,
Otherwise, we can certainly do them at the end. So I'm going to start at the very basic levels, and then we'll get into some details. So there's really two different groups in town that function as the decision makers for the town of Brookline. There is the governing body, which is a 5-member select board that meets every 2 weeks on a Monday night here in the town hall. And they are charged with setting policy and approving payments and things of that sort. You could think of them as somewhat of an executive body for the town. And I, as the town administrator, basically do the work of the select board between their biweekly meetings. to simplify things. The second group that effectively runs the town is its residents, which serve as the legislative body for the town. And that legislative body gets together once a year at our annual town meeting. To complicate things a little bit, our town meeting is actually in two parts. And I'll get into two different documents that I want to walk through with you folks. The first part is this year on Tuesday, March 8th, which is all-day voting. It is held up at Captain Samuel Douglas Academy, which is our upper elementary school. And it is held from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And residents there come to vote on elected offices for town and school positions. But they also have an opportunity to vote on zoning amendments that may impact our land use requirements around town. So that's the first piece, all day voting on Tuesday. The very next day, on Wednesday, March 9th, in the evening, starting at 7 o'clock, is the most democratic process that I've ever experienced, where anyone in the gym at Captain Samuel Douglas Academy, CSDA, serves as the legislative body and approves and discusses and debates and finally approves the business of the town for the year. So that is at the 60,000 foot level, an overview of who the decision makers are, including each of you on this call. One of the things that I want to point out is our town report. It's about 200 pages. This is last year's report. This coming year's report will be available at the very end of this month. It will also be available electronically on the town website. Copies of it, when it comes, will be made available at the town hall, as well as the library, as well as the post office. And in that report is a whole wealth of information. If you have not had an opportunity to look at it, I would certainly suggest you do so. It's reports from every committee and board in town. And then it also gets into the details and the information that will be voted on at the annual meeting. Among other things, it also includes not only town information, but also information for both the Brookline School District as well as our cooperative school district. So it's a great resource. So with that as kind of an overview, what I wanted to do was walk you through two documents that are contained within each of these annual reports and give you a preview of what will be contained in this year's town report. People see what I've pulled up here. Okay, so the first document, which is about 3 or 4 pages, I just want to quickly walk through, is at the very end of the, at the very beginning, I should say, of the printed town report. And it's just an overview of our Brookline annual meetings. And I just thought this serves as a great basis for Town Meeting 101. So let me hit on some of the highlights for this. So there is the town meeting on Wednesday, March 9th, as I said, at 7 p.m. There is also the all-day voting on Tuesday, March 8th. And there's also an annual district, cooperative district meeting that is held. It's actually going to be 2 nights this year, March 15th and 16th at 7 p.m. at the high school. Just like we have an annual town meeting, the co-op district has an annual school meeting where they act on their business. What I'd like to do is skip to the second page of this Town Meeting 101 and just go through some various items that are covered or you would hear talked about at town meeting, just to be able to make sure that there's a basic understanding of them. You might hear the term warrant. What's a warrant? A warrant is actually the agenda for the meeting. You can view it as kind of a warning of what will be discussed at the meeting. And in each warrant, which will be signed by the select board this Monday night and then publicized, in the warrant are individual articles. And those individual articles basically advise the voters of what will be talked about. And I'll get into, I'm going to walk you through the actual warrant we have for this year's town meeting. The articles are usually placed on the warrant by the select board or the school board. However, you as residents actually have the ability to force what we refer to as a petition warrant article onto the warrant. And what it takes is just 25 registered voters to sign a petition, and that petition be provided to the select board by the deadline. This year, the deadline was February 1st. So if, residents wanted to see something voted on, you put on a piece of paper what you want to have voted on. You put names and signatures and addresses. The town clerk verifies that there are at least 25 registered voters, and that item, hopefully in a legal format, is then taken up as another item of business at the town meeting. Just going to skip through here a couple things. Another term here on the third page is a non-lapsing appropriation. At the end of each year, typically the town has not spent all of its budget. This year, for example, I think we ended up with about $165,000 that was unspent at the end of the calendar year. That money then is returned to the general fund to offset taxes the next year. There are exceptions to that, and they're called non-lapsing appropriations. If there is a warrant article that is proposed that is approved, it may, let's say, pave a road, but that may take more than a year. That article and the funding of that does not get returned to taxpayers at the end of the year if it isn't spent. It's non-lapsing, and it can stay in that status for up to 5 years. The next item is a capital reserve fund, and this is something that the select board has over the last few years started to utilize more than in the recent past. As you can imagine, a town has some expenses that aren't annual. They might happen every 5 years, or they might happen every 15 years, if you think in terms of a fire truck purchase. The use of a capital reserve fund allows us to put away, perhaps on an annual basis, a smaller sum of money, so that when it comes time to make that every 5-year or every 15-year purchase, there isn't a big hit to the taxpayers. So you may see and would see at town meeting some reference to the capital reserve fund. A motion to move the question is a wonderful term that we hear at town meeting. As you might imagine, at times debate can go on for a while. And all it takes is somebody getting to the microphone at town meeting after some debate, and they simply ask the moderator or state they are making a motion to move the question. That wonderful phrase ends debate and allows us to move on to voting on that warrant article that is on the floor. The second term from the bottom on this page is a written ballot. I think one of the things that is important to know if you have not attended a town meeting is when you arrive at a town meeting, you check in with the supervisors of the checklist so that they can verify that you're a registered voter. One of the things that they give to you once they verified you're a registered voter is a small index card. And that index card is what you use to vote on most of the warrant articles during the evening. And the way you vote is you simply raise your card in the air when the moderator asks for a vote. Raise your hand for yay or nay, as the case may be. And the moderator, using his or her discretion, judges whether the yays or nays have it. However, some warrant articles require a written ballot, so it's secret. The legislative body also has the ability to require a written ballot on any warrant article. It only takes 5 identifiable voters to request the moderator to have a written ballot for any vote. There is a 5-minute rule for speakers' remarks. On our last page of this overview, we have a motion to pass over. When a warrant article comes up for discussion, it is possible for the legislative body or a member of it to make a motion to simply pass over the article. If that wins by a 2/3 majority, no action is taken on that article. It's just passed over. A motion for reconsideration. Let us say at 8:15 in the evening at town meeting, a vote was taken to approve the purchase of a dump truck. Later in the evening, a motion could be made for reconsideration of that, based on whatever may have come to the mind of a voter. So as you can imagine, that could lead to some potential shenanigans late at night when you've started the evening with 200 people in the gym, and at 11:30 at night, as we're winding down at the end of the night and there's only 40 people left, it can allow for some shenanigans. And that is what leads us to the next bullet, a motion to restrict reconsideration. You will often see at town meeting, after a warrant article has been approved, a resident may get up and move to restrict reconsideration, which would prevent that kind of tact from happening. A point of order, you will often hear that made once or twice during a town meeting, and that is simply a resident or voter asking a procedural question or raising the question of whether an error has been made for the moderator's consideration. So that's kind of an overview of terms that we find. What I'd like to do now is just walk through the warrant that I spoke of that serves as the agenda for this March's town meeting. So at the top, again, we see that it's a 2-day affair. The polls being open all day on Tuesday, March 8th. The business meeting where the warrant articles are, the balance of warrant articles are addressed, is on Wednesday, March 9th. We have a snow date of the 10th. And then we get into the individual numbered warrant articles. So just starting at the top, and I won't go through each and every one here, but I wanted to give you a flavor of what will be discussed at this year's town meeting. Item number 1 is always the election of town officers. So this is referring to the first of the 2 days where the elections are held, and the moderator at the evening portion of the meeting on Wednesday will disclose the results of those elections. Item 2, warrant article 2, are all of the zoning amendments that have been proposed. So as any town, Brookline has land use zoning rules, and occasionally those get amended or updated or modified. And this year we have 6 proposed amendments that will be voted on in the
Sorry,
vote.
are you sharing? Are you sharing this in your screen?
I am.
I can't see it. I'm still stuck on the Word document.
I'm sharing the Word documents, Scott. Do you see?
Just, it says motion to adjourn, page 3.
Huh. Let me try one thing here. Is that better, Scott? Can you see that?
Yes.
There we
Okay.
go.
All right, good. Sorry about that, folks. So I'm just going to go up to the very top of this. Again, this is the warrant for town meeting. At the very top, you will see the date and times of the all-day election, the start time for the Wednesday evening town meeting, and then we have the numbered warrant articles. Again, the first was for the result of the elections. The second is detailing the 6 zoning amendments that have been approved by the planning board. Again, this document will appear in the town report that's available at the end of the month. You will see for the first 4 amendments, there's very little language here. It's very specific in terms of the proposed change. Amendments 5 and 6, at the end of them, you will see there's a reference to a page in the town report. We're still waiting to get that magical page number, but there will be several pages of details in the town report showing what the proposed workforce housing zoning and growth management ordinance zoning is. Okay. Warrant Article 3 is something that we have every year. It's to hear all reports of the select board and other town officers and committees. This is kind of a blanket and a bookkeeping warrant article where there is a very quick motion made to simply accept all of the reports that are contained within the annual report. So then we move to the 4th warrant article. And this year it is, and required to be, the first warrant article because it involves a bond. And what this is seeking the taxpayers' approval for a bond in the amount of up to $1.2495 million for the purchase of a handful of parcels of land for conservation. And you can see that the acreage of the various parcels are disclosed, as well as the current owners. And for reference purposes, if you wanted to look at the tax map, you can see the map and lot number of each of them. I can, to do away with suspense, note that all of these are located in the far northwest corner of Brookline, off of Hutchinson Hill Road, off of the undeveloped area of Hutchinson Hill Road. So because this is a ballot issue and because it's a bond, it requires voting on a piece of paper put in a ballot box. There will be discussion, debate about this, and then voters will have at least 1 hour to vote on it. So some people on this kind of matter will watch from home and then drive to CSDA, check in, get the ballot, check yes or no, put it in the ballot box. So it's very important to know for this one article, because it's a bond, there is that flexibility. Typically, for other warrant articles, you have to be there and it's an instant vote. This kind of topic warrants significant information to be provided to residents because there's a big price tag. I would note that this Monday night during the select board meeting, there will be a bond hearing, which is required to be held a certain period of time before town meeting, where a member of the Conservation Commission will be discussing more of the details of this. So if you're interested in that, that will be at 7 o'clock this Monday night, available via Zoom or here at the Town Hall meeting room. So that's warrant article 4. Warrant article 5 is seeking the approval for a third full-time member of our Public Works Department. 5 years ago, Brookline did not have a Public Works Department, which may seem odd, but it's not terribly unusual for smaller towns in New Hampshire. What we were doing was we had elected a road agent who happened to own a lot of equipment, and he utilized his equipment at hourly rates to do work for the town. We have moved over the period of the last 3 or 4 years towards, and it takes a number of years, towards establishing a more traditional Public Works Department. We first hired a director of Public Works, then added a second full-time, and this is seeking approval for a third full-time person. Why does this warrant article appear here? Well, it immediately precedes the operating budget, which is the most significant warrant article of the meeting. The reason it precedes it is because if the voters choose to approve the addition of this person, it is actually going to reduce the operating budget. So you can see in warrant article 5, the underlined sentence, if that warrant article is passed, warrant article number 6, the next one, would be reduced by $42,500. So in essence, adding that third full-time person for a net additional cost of about $10,000 for 2022 specifically. As you can see at the bottom of these warrant articles, the select board and oftentimes the finance committee have taken votes on whether they recommend or do not recommend a specific warrant article. So you can see those here. Those votes were taken during a 2-day budget hearing at the end of January. One of the things I will note, if I can go back up to the bond warrant article 4, you can see there was a vote of 2 to 1 by the select board. So with a tie like that, there's not it's neither a recommend or a not recommend. So there may be some discussion at town meeting, and one of those 5 select board members, or more than one, could potentially change their vote. Sometimes at town meeting, a voter will stand up and say, I see that 2 select board members voted against this, and ask why. So that can also be insightful. Warrant article 6 is the operating budget. Just under $6 million. And you can see recommended by the select board 4 to 1 and unanimously supported by the finance committee. This is a culmination of all of the individual line items in the operating budget. The 7th warrant article is looks fairly complicated. The upshot of this is that we have had perhaps a little bit of a cumbersome approach that at last year's town meeting, the members of town meeting said we want to do away with and simplify. So this warrant article basically does that. For those of you who have cable, you may see on your monthly bill, there is a franchise fee. That franchise fee of all of the subscribers in town is put together, and a check is sent annually on the amount recently of about $45,000 that's paid to the town. We have historically taken that money and utilized it for the cable access channel that we utilize to broadcast meetings, for deferring the costs of our town website or streaming of meetings. Last year, we had taken a vote to take 50% of the money that we get from Spectrum's franchise fee and put that in a separate cable access fund. This warrant article does away with that and just makes future costs related to our cable access or our website part of our operating budget. Warrant Article 8 establishes a Public Works revolving fund. We receive from the state on an annual basis a highway block grant that is usually around $140,000 to $150,000. Those funds are required to be utilized for highway-related activities. So what we're doing to ensure that that happens is that we are taking those dedicated monies from 2021's grant. We're putting them in a specific separate revolving fund, and any future grants that come from that in subsequent years will go into that segregated revolving fund. And those funds will be available for the purchase of public works equipment or the repair of a road, repair of a bridge. There's flexibility. Late last year, the public works director became aware of an opportunity to purchase a wheeled excavator at a great price. The fact that we had money in a capital reserve fund that could be used for equipment allowed us to act on that. This revolving fund will similarly do that, but with some greater flexibility. It will also mean that future years, those grants money goes into this revolving fund, so we will not have to have this warrant article every year. The next item, warrant article 9. Several years ago, the town was granted a grant of federal and state money to construct 2 pedestrian bridges over the Nissitissit River, one on Mason Road near the town beach, and the other on South Main Street, and to also construct a sidewalk along South Main Street from Route 130 down to the rail trail that is located on South Main Street. During the design phase of that this past year, the Department of Transportation, because both South Main Street and Mason Road are state roads, they have a say in the design, and they asked or requested that we move the pedestrian bridges further away from the vehicular bridges. That added some cost, and therefore we are seeking additional funds in order to be able to complete those projects this summer. 80% of the costs are covered by the grant, 20% through Brookline taxpayer money. So as you can see here, it's a total of that is being appropriated of $343,000 for the project. 20% of it, or $68,600, would come from taxpayers. Warrant articles 10 and 11 do something that I mentioned earlier when it came to that first document we looked at. The purchase of a fire truck every 15 or 20 years is a big ticket item. The select board and the finance committee and the fire department a few years ago agreed to start putting away money on an annual basis. This year, $50,000 to avoid the big hit to taxpayers when an actual purchase is needed. So that's warrant article 10. Warrant article 11, similarly, every 5 years we have a townwide reappraisal that has to happen, and rather than have that significant cost hit the taxpayers that 5th year, we are putting away between $16,000 and $17,000 each year to have that money set aside when that bill comes due. Warrant article 12 is a warrant article that we have had the last few years, and it is somewhat of a contingency fund of $10,000 that's set aside in a town facilities capital reserve fund that is used in the event of any unexpected repairs that are required to a town building. I think it was maybe 5 years ago, the roof at the safety complex failed. The first portion of the building, the ambulance side, when they built it, they had put compostable shingles on the roof. And unfortunately, we discovered that they composted in place and failed much sooner than they were supposed to. And it was a great surprise. And the $45,000 expense was difficult to handle within a budget that did not contemplate it. So that's what led to the creation of that Facilities Capital Reserve Fund. Warrant Article 13 is one that we see each year. For those who are not aware of it, our ambulance service does not charge for its services, and oftentimes will receive donations from people who utilize it. And at the end of each year, the donations that came in the prior year are, through this warrant article, swept into an ambulance service expendable trust fund, so that those funds can then be utilized by the ambulance service for the purchases of equipment and so forth. Warrant Article 14, there is a land acquisition fund that the Conservation Commission has. Over the last 10 years or so, the Conservation Commission has run, managed some trail races, and those trail races have raised funds that they then utilize for trail maintenance. And this article simply takes the money that has come in from those various trail races and segments it into a separate conservation trails revolving fund, so that that money is carved out and used solely for trail maintenance. And it moves $57,670 out of the conservation fund and into that new revolving fund. Warrant Article 15 is basically approving an open space lot, part of lot H75, which is off of Sawtell Road. When that subdivision was approved, our subdivision regulations required that town meeting actually officially accept open space lots, and that is not required anymore. But that open space lot was never formally approved by town meeting, so that's a housekeeping item here for the town to officially accept that lot as town property. Warrant Article 16, for those who are not familiar with 10 Rod Road off of Townsend Hill Road, the Public Works Director has recommended that that road, which doesn't serve any homes, be reclassified from a Class 5 road to a Class A trail, to reduce some of the expenses related to it, and also allow for some constant drainage issues that have been faced on that road where it intersects with Route 13, so those can be addressed. Warrant Article 17 is simply the acceptance of some cemetery plots that were purchased last year. And then to round things out, we have 2 petition warrant articles that were received. I had spoken about that. There were at least 25 registered voters who signed 2 different petitions, which will be acted on at town meeting. One related to Melendi Pond and one related to making the, to increasing the veterans tax credit from $500 to $750. So I've gone on for plenty of time, so I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody is still awake.
Here we are. Everyone feel free, unmute yourself or ask a question in the chat, either one. Let's see, we've got. Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, we will try to do this every year. So does anyone have any questions? Please feel free.
Tad, it's Peter.
Yes,
Kirk.
Peter.
I think a word or two from you on the greater context in which the legislative body, the town meeting fits with the school boards, 2 school boards, and the town sort of being 3 separate entities.
Good.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. I think many people don't realize that the town is very, very separate from the 2 different school districts. The Brookline School District, pre-K through grade 6, has its own school board and therefore its own governing body. And the co-op, grades 7 through 12, has its own governing body or school board, completely separate from the town. I think one of the other points to make here is that when you think about your tax bill, what we are voting on at our annual town meeting, those decisions impact somewhere between 15 and 20% of your tax bill. It's a relatively small portion. The bigger portions are the co-op and the school district, but it's all important.
So to answer a couple of the questions that are in the chat, so the information that Tad shared about the general procedures for town meeting, those will be in the front of the town report when it comes out. You can access last year's town report also here at the library and other places. The definitions and all those things, those will be right in the front of the town report. It's very helpful, especially if you're going to town meeting for the first time. As far as entering an item to the agenda, Tad had said this, is that the agenda are the warrant articles. So to add a warrant article, it has to be by petition. It has a deadline that's set, I believe by state law, if I'm not mistaken, right, Tad, by a certain amount of time.
Yeah, so
that
unfortunately, that deadline has passed for this March's town meeting. It tends to be around February 1st of it each year.
Mhm.
So for next March's town meeting, there's 2 different approaches. One can come to the select board, a regular meeting, and say, geez, I have this idea. Would you be interested in pursuing this warrant article so that if it's approved, it can get enacted? Again, most of the time, the warrant articles are put on the warrant by the select board. So one opportunity is having a dialogue with them early in the year, or the second is that petition warrant article approach.
And the third question we had is when and where are the warrant article available? If you want to repeat what you said early on,
Sure.
Tad.
So the select board will be reviewing and likely signing this year's town meeting warrant on Monday night. So that will then be available. It gets posted at CSDA. It gets hung outside just inside the door to the post office next to the public notices. It will obviously be on the town website, and it will also be at the fairly early on in the town report that will be available probably February 28th.
And again, that town report you can pick up at town hall, at the town library, and at the post office.
Right.
And it will be available on the website.
Correct. But if you haven't made it to town meeting, and I would strongly suggest you make it. It is it can be painful at times. It can go on a little bit, but it is the purest of democratic processes and something unique to New England.
Mhm.
And I hope it never goes away.
I agree with that. It is.
Absolutely.
I hope it never goes away. And it's just a great way to learn about the town and the people in it. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
Keith, I see a question coming in about
Oh.
Zoom links and select board minutes, select board meetings. I'm going to share my screen again, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'm going to go to the town website. And for people who might be interested in seeing whether it be a select board meeting, a planning board meeting, a conservation commission meeting. Here's our town website. If you go down towards the bottom of that, you can see live and on-demand meeting videos. If you click on this button, it brings you to a provider that we've contracted with for about 10 years called Town Hall Streams. And here you can see upcoming meetings that are scheduled. But over here, you can see prior meetings that have already been held and have been recorded. So it allows you to see the Conservation Commission meeting from earlier this week if you wish, or any of them. So
A lovely addition they put on Town Hall for that, on that page. It was,
what's that?
there was some gigantic picture of some gigantic city hall that is definitely not Daniel's Academy.
Oh, that was Town Hall Streams. That wasn't us. No.
So, excellent. Any other questions? I don't want to.
I know it takes time out of people's busy schedule to get educated around this. I know it can also be a little bit intimidating. We're not asking anyone to get to the microphone at town meeting, but give it a try if you want. And if you do have questions between now and town meeting, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to try to make it as clear for anybody as possible.
And yeah, Carrie just put a question in there. Yes, Town Hall Streams is view only. That's correct. But they are live as well as archived for a certain period of time. And
Absentee voting at town meetings is not an option at the evening portion of town meeting. You can vote by absentee for the all-day voting, electing officers. But
Correct.
the evening portion, you have to be there.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Tad, for doing this. We did this not last year, but we've done it 3 times, I think, in the last few years. It's great to see how many people we had participated. I hope everyone learned something they're going to find helpful. And I hope we encourage people to volunteer in town and to participate. That's how the town works. Go. Yes, thank you very much. All right. All right. If there's no more questions, then I'll let everybody go and have a good rest of your evening.
Excellent. Thank you, Keith.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Tad.
Bye.
Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it.
Excellent.
Here's my video. Night all. Thanks a lot.
Okay. That there. Thank you, everyone.